Hello and welcome to We Are the Deluge, which was usually a spoiler-free chapter-by-chapter podcast about the climate change novel The Deluge by Stephen Markley, but not here. We're your co-hosts Emily Crandall and John McMahon, and look at all of our shit. Today we are, for yet to be determined reasons, talking about the 2012 film Spring Breakers, written and directed by Harmony Korine.
The 2012 masterpiece.
2012 masterpiece.
Cinema, yeah.
I have to say, this is part of a series of movies in the early 2010s that totally changed my relationship to film. And
really?
I say that unabashedly. Yes.
That's amazing.
I mean, I looked up the dates this morning. So the Melancholia 2011, this 2012, and then Under the Skin 2013, totally changed my conception of film.
So did you see this when it came out in 2012?
I saw this in theaters.
So did I. Okay, This is funny because we were already colleagues at this time, and I think already friends also.
Yes,
but
definitely.
I don't remember if we discussed having seen it, and I wonder if because both of us were sort of privately ashamed, this isn't a movie serious academics should love, and so
That's
we will
exactly
take it
what
to
I
our
was going
graves.
to suggest.
Yeah.
Yep. That, and I don't even know how to classify it, but the mainstream-y feminist backlash towards this movie, I think that and meant that in polite company you could not admit one's unabashed love for this film.
I can just imagine a few who figures who will not be named in DC political science, overhearing us talking about this film and just coming after us. But also no one could have as wide ranging and as abstract and as absurd of a conversation about this movie as you and I can. So I'm so excited.
I'll ask, one of two questions for you. What is this film about, or why do we love this film so much? And take your pick.
Okay. I think this film is about... Ooh, which one do I want to pick? Okay, I think one thing this film is about, which I didn't have a frame for in 2012, but which becomes increasingly a lens through which I watch this film, is this is a film about American excess and white ignorance. I
love that. Mm-hmm. I'm going to add something else in there. This is a film that is crucial in anticipating the male loneliness epidemic discourse.
Yes.
And thus is also a movie about the manosphere that's not about the manosphere.
Mm-hmm. And it's also a movie about climate change. This is what it's about. It's not even a stretch.
Yeah.
Okay, I think one thing I love about this movie is I love how a cursory surface read of it is so at odds with, I think, what it's really up to. And I find that so delightful that someone could watch this and be like, it's exploitative, it's objectifying, it's sexist, this film is gross. The man who made this is a gross man. Yes. I love that about it.
Yes. Because none of those things are necessarily wrong.
No. And they're also not true.
Perfectly said.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a film that opens with 5 minutes, I should have checked, of just spring break debauchery and a lot of nudity.
Yeah. And the really MTV-ified version of spring break debauchery, which in 2012 is already kind of a relic of the past.
Exactly right. Which
is very fascinating. And there's something in the way that it's edited that is kind of sad about it. It's it's not actually the hyper glitzy version of the MTV Spring Break. There's a version of Spring Break that's it is both hyper-sexed and in some way kind of innocent. It's this perfect moment of late adolescence, early adulthood where you're just hot, beautiful, having so much fun. Nothing is dangerous either. And this does not tap into that aesthetic, that version of the aesthetic at all. In fact, it does the exact inverse of that.
On multiple levels, because I think at some point it's cutting in actual old footage of like MTV Spring Break from the 90s.
Yeah.
Then at some point that tips over into filming what is happening in the film as if it was 90s MTV Spring Break, like in terms of like camera resolution, the like the relationship of the camera to bodies is slightly different than like the opening Spring Breakers on the beach scene. And I appreciate the way in which Harmony Korine is like tapping into that, not just thematically.
Yeah, it's also hilarious.
Yes, it's one of the funniest movies I've ever seen.
I'm just like cracking up the entire time. Like James Franco as a gangster poet. Wow, chef's kiss. Especially just because of like him also as a public figure and your theory of like this film anticipating the manosphere. It's like he is a perfect choice for that. It's like it's almost like you couldn't make it today.
Definitely not.
About the things that it is about, even in 2012 with the people who are in it. And so it's also just like this incredible time capsule of like, but also it defies time, which I'm sure we'll get into.
Yes. Yes. I mean, so in a totally separate context, before we haven't even decided to do this, I saw a line from the film critic Adam Naiman last week, where he talked about this being the role that James Franco was born to play for better and worse, or better and worse, or something to that effect. And I think that's exactly right.
So true. In the episode that you've just heard, listeners
are about to hear, I think.
Are about to hear, yes, in some temporal fashion that makes some kind of sense. There's also, not in the discussion of the film necessarily, but we make reference to the Disney Channel stars, right? Mm-hmm. Which is an interesting thing. Like, who would even be in this film now if it was made? I don't know. Yeah,
I mean, it's people we're now too old to know.
Yeah.
And which is another, okay, I was going to roll this take out later, but I'll do it now because I think it's appropriate, is that this movie is for millennials what Saltburn is for Gen Z, i.e. Spring Breakers is the American spiritual predecessor to Saltburn, i.e. Spring Breakers walked so Saltburn could run.
I buy that.
Yeah.
That's okay. That's really fascinating too. When we get into our EPC stuff, so we can tease this out a little more. But I'm wondering if generationally too, there's something about like the class kind of like aspiration / escapism.
Yes.
That also, and like also the fact that Saltburn, like I would argue maybe to add to your take, that Saltburn is also for an American Gen Z audience, so that there's like displaced escapism. It's not just like we are wealthy people in the countryside, but we are wealthy people in the English countryside.
Yes,
but also
it's pulling on Anglophilia.
Yeah. But also we despise them, and we derive pleasure from them being rendered an object of our disgust, disdain, judgment, etc.
Yeah. And it will not surprise anybody to learn that I'm also an unironic lover of Saltburn.
Yeah, no, not at all.
It's to me also the way that they both use Harmony Korine and Emerald Fennell like use lighting.
Yeah,
right? Like there are a few films that like use the color pink better than Spring Breakers. There are a few films that use like red and blue neon adjacent light better than Spring Breakers.
It's also, I mean, I did not party like that in college, but like I went to some parties, and there's like a bit of it that's like it's close enough to something real.
And you were in San Diego. This is
on the beach, right?
Yeah.
But it's like close enough, but also so dramatically different from the reality of what like college kids partying is actually like. It's actually way more tame and like way more, I don't know, way less violent, right? And so, but it's like the way it teeters on the border of like reality and total absurdity is so clever. It like hangs right there. It's like right in that slice edge. Yeah.
And in the final scene of Spring Breakers, like I did have the thought yesterday about whether this actually happened.
Yes.
Like the final shootout when it's Britt and Candy at that point, right? So like when they, Aileen is killed like 6 seconds into their assault on Archie's like house and grounds. And then like they kill a dozen people, 15, 20 people who also have guns. And the 2 girls have perfect aim.
And every
never
single
have
one
to reload.
is a black man, right?
Yes.
They don't kill either of the women?
No.
Yeah.
I don't think they kill any of the women anywhere in the house.
Let's come back to that question when we get to the end and to EPT and to maybe threading to the deluge.
That makes total sense to me. One of the things that I had always clocked but never had actually thought about until this viewing, and like your point about excess, I think is spot on here, is the way that they use like the sound of like loading or racking a gun as the editing sound.
Yeah.
And that like doesn't start immediately, but it starts, if I had it correct, after Candy and Britt and Cotty steal from the chicken shack in
I think
Florida.
It happens during the scene where they're stealing. Anyway, it's like sometime around that. Yeah. Yeah, it's really effective too, because it also appears in moments where there isn't obviously a gun at all, or
precisely.
B, being cocked or loaded or whatever. So it's like, it's almost like a Pavlovian, like it like clues you into something or like racks up the anxiety or like suddenly you're alert to like danger. But it also has this kind of like recursive function where like suddenly you're pulled back to something rather than looped forward to something.
You're pulled back to the American love of guns and gun violence.
Yeah. Look at all my shit.
As tied. I mean, and look at all of my shit is like in the weapons room, which is also the bedroom, right? Like, you know, never have Eros and Thanatos been closer than
so it's so funny, like so literal too in the scene. He's like literally filleting the gun and but like
the literality of it is incredible. That's one of the beautiful things about this film. And it's like, okay, you're going to make the like phallus gun association. No, I'm going to do it for you. And I'm going to have James Franco
literally suck on that. Yeah. There is a moment there where you're like, oh, they're going to kill him.
Yes.
And then it like, again, kind of does that razor edge between the two possible outcomes, or maybe there's even more possible outcomes, but like, is it sexy or is it death? You know, JK, it's both.
And then that is the place at which Aileen says that he's in love with them, or thinks he's in love with them.
Yeah. Well, he says they were his soulmates, which is very fascinating too, because it's like different than, you know, maybe it overlaps with being in love, but it's like, it's certainly its own, it evokes its own kind of history that's not necessarily the same. Yeah. Okay. The thing I didn't clock on prior watches that was very fascinating to me on this watch is the lecture at the beginning from their class, their professor.
Are you jacked for Jesus, Emily Crandall?
It's so funny, but like before that, even when they're in class, the professor's giving a lecture and he says, changing gears from Elvis in the 50s, my lecture last time. And then he starts talking about the second Reconstruction, this, I think, trying to thread a needle about like this constant struggle of Black people in the South to sort of claim a freedom that's ostensibly owed to them.
Yes.
Then I think he's talking about Black soldiers getting radicalized during World War II, not Vietnam.
Yes.
Which is very interesting. So like, what is the lecture about? I read one article that was like, the professor's giving a lecture about redlining. And I was like,
that's not true.
Think that's true.
No. I paid close attention to this, despite Brett and Candy's antics. It was funny. It was very amusing to have every student have their laptop on a screen that was synced to the lecture. It's just an incredible sight gag.
Yeah.
And then, yes, it is about Black soldiers coming back from World War II. So like there's a strange temporality things. He says, all right, so we're moving ahead to the Black civil rights movement after I talked about Elvis in the 50s. And for a movie that's going to be entirely about like white appropriation of and violence against, right, Blackness, Black culture, and Black people, like that Elvis is like in minute 6 of this movie is notable. Yeah. Then goes back, yes, precisely to Black soldiers coming back from World War II.
It's so interesting. And so then and then that's immediately juxtaposed with Selena Gomez at the church group.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean,
it's like the two pillars of American culture, right? Like appropriation of and violence against Blackness and religion.
And the pastor.
Protestant, yeah.
Yeah. I'm already having so many Deluge connections. Like, can we start sort of laying some out?
Yes, I mean, this is the Jeff Jarvis, right? Is that the wrestler's name? I looked this up earlier. Is playing the pastor? He's much better than the pastor, we think, from the Deluge. But you could see.
Well, there's an interesting difference in that he's like not in a virtual X sphere.
This is true.
And like, correct me if I'm wrong, but in the Deluge, I don't know that we see the pastor like interacting with young girls at all.
No.
Yeah. So like, that's interesting because this pastor is maybe like a different kind of charismatic, but he's also like slicker and grosser. Like maybe less explicitly
energy. Yes.
Less explicitly white nationalist, perhaps, as in the little bit we get of him, except that he's in this film. So I think it's implied.
With heavily bleached blonde hair.
Yes. Yeah. But like borderline gross, right? Like you're like, oh, at least it's laying the seeds there. I mean, I think you could watch it and be like, read it as benign, but like not if you're really watching it.
Right. Because there are not quite matching shots, but when the camera at the beginning is panning across the people on spring break on the beach, right? And then there's a similar pan as the like youths are sitting on the ground, like moving their bodies in a totally different way, but like clapping in unison with one another. And there is still like an embodied worship of something. And like instead of debauchery, it's this particular version of Jesus.
Yeah. And then that like haunting amen song they sing that like it voices over a couple parallel scenes, not just the one scene where they're actually singing it, which is it's like scary.
I mean, look, Harmony Korine named the main character Faith.
I know, it's so funny.
Has Aileen comment on that, early in their meeting.
It's so good.
And then to have the two girls, one of which my friend Regan, who I watched it with, informed me was in Glee. Outside of the youth group.
She's Brittany from Glee. Yeah.
Yeah. They talk about how the Brit and Candy are demon girls, and that you need to pray a lot while you're down there. Pray super hard and on spring break.
It's so funny. One of my friends I was watching with, who has also read The Deluge, flagged the college party that they go to before spring break as like the parties in the opening Keeper chapter.
It's a great point.
Yeah. Because those ones are grainy and like not MTV-y.
No.
And like nothing like Keeper level is necessarily happening in them, but it's certainly implied that it could be happening.
Yeah. 100%.
In any one of the doors, right?
Yeah. Especially because there's a like economically depressed, predominantly white area, but we know by the absence that it's not actually like 98% white. So there's a question of like who is actually at the party.
Yeah.
So the color of that frat party is blue. And like, to me, and maybe this was in the text or not, like the opening Keeper chapter is like red and orange is like the color I associate with it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, because it's hot, right? That's one of the chapters where Keeper is like sweating
every chapter.
Yeah.
But which is in contrast then here in Spring Breakers, right? Because like it's blue. It's the light is as cool as possible, despite it being, March in Florida is okay. Also, I didn't clock this before, but this just makes it like Harmony Korine was 100 chess moves ahead. Part of this was filmed at New College of Florida. And you actually see a New College of Florida banner like on the top of the frame for about 2.5 seconds.
Wow.
When they're like walking down like the main walkway of the campus at night.
That's so good. But isn't it Faith who, when they're having the really dramatic conversation about how desperate they are to go on spring break, Isn't Faith the one who says everyone's miserable because they see the same thing every day?
Yes.
That's interesting to me because she's like, her character is so fascinating because she like moves from this like goody, I'm corruptible, or I don't want to be corrupted, into like, I'm actually one of the drivers of this. And like she slips back and forth, I think, really easily, which is very interesting.
The recurring voiceovers of the like young women's calls home, and the juxtaposition of those calls to what is happening, and then the repetition of like phrases and dialogue and VO from all of those calls. I mean, especially at the end when it's like Britt and Candy who are calling home, where like it's as if the film like is stuck on that call, and like the like tape is, you know, the record is skipping, right? Like the tape is not working, it's not rolling, it's like rewinding on itself. The repetition of the movie, which I could imagine driving some people crazy, I think functions so well to confront the watcher of this film.
To the did this film ever happen question. It's also like, when the calls are taking place is never really clear because they appear to be on the phone, kind of interspersed throughout. But it also, like, when you watch the recurring lines from the phone calls over increasingly violent action, it seems like all the calls are made at the end.
Yes.
And then retroactively, what they mean as a description of the trip that has already come to pass is like dramatically different from if they're like happy in the beginning and making phone calls home.
The idealization of spring break as escape, like paired with the reality, but then it gets like blown in back into the fantasy by those dialogues is, again, I think, like to your point about this being excess and this not being romantic about spring break in the slightest is put on display in that mechanism as well.
I mean, frankly, too, it's kind of a bleak portrayal of college education in a place that is not wealthy and not elite, right? I mean, that's how we're supposed to read this place. It's like a middle tier college, right? In like
I read it
anywhere
as,
USA.
It would be 100%. I read it as like the SUNY Plattsburgh of Florida, Central Florida.
It's kind of a bleak.
It's extremely bleak. Yeah. Well, I mean, to the point where, and I don't think I'd ever actually caught this before, but the implication that Cotty was sleeping with the professor whose car they steal for the robbery.
Yeah.
I absolutely love the decision they made to only film the original robbery from the outside as Cotty is circling the building, and then to cut back to it about midway through the film from the inside as Candy and Britt are like reenacting it in the parking lot of the like gas station or liquor store or whatever, as a way to thematize, right, the relationship of like sex, violence, power, and gender, and the way those run together. That is an incredible choice in such an excessive film to actually hold back on the initial moment.
Well, and also that it increasingly becomes more about race because you don't really see from the initial exterior perspective that most of the patrons of the Chicken Shack are people of color, but that becomes very clear when you move to the other dynamic and when you actually hear more clearly, but it's still not perfectly crisp, right? The audio of like what's going on the inside. Okay, I want to point to something that I noticed on this that was really funny. Is like, obviously this film requires like a bunch of degrees of suspension of disbelief, but there was like a layer of it that is so banal and like logistical that really struck me this time. It's like, wait, where are their clothes? How long have they been there? Like, how
Great
did
question.
they, like at the very beginning, like, how did they have money for cocaine when they don't have money for a bus ticket?
I did wonder about this.
Like, there's all these like funny logistical things that are like a different layer of suspension of disbelief than the excessive, the absurd, the spectacular, right? Which are funny because they don't necessarily complement each other. Like, to make something sort of logistically impossible doesn't necessarily lend it to being a commentary on like excess or spectacularness, and in fact, it's like a little mundane.
Yes.
To be like, this doesn't make sense. How did they even get their clothes back or whatever? Because like they were at this hotel party, then they're in jail for like 2 days. Like, how long are they in jail?
I think they're in jail. They're either in jail like 6 hours because like they brought all the judges in for overtime during spring break weeks. The brothers and Aileen bail them out, the same day, or like they spent one night and they get bailed out the next morning, day, whatever. I mean, the
way they cut it is really interesting, though, because it could be like they've been there for 6 days.
Yes. And this is one of the first repetitions because they show the girls young women in the courtroom twice.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
And then they get walked out and like into the garage of this like municipal, courthouse or police station or whatever. And like the light opens and like there is James Franco, is Alien, standing there with his baller vehicle.
Why is he in court in the first place?
Because his like crew, the twin brothers, also got arrested.
Okay.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell if they were like actually his crew or not. I mean,
because this is part of the male. Yeah, because this is part of the male loneliness reading is that the twin brothers are creepy as fuck, and what he says about them is incredibly creepy. And then B, they disappear other than to like count money, prepare weapons, or like parcel out drugs to sell. But they're not there in the final.
No one
final
is.
Attack. Yeah, it's just the three of them.
And like he dies alone.
And gets a kiss from both of them on their way out. And then the camera like is partially like tilted and then it inverts to like watch Britt and Candy like run away from the perspective of the dead or dying on the ground. Upside down at this point, Britt and Candy from his perspective.
It's crazy.
This is an incredible movie.
Okay, what do you make of like James Franco's character, Aileen, qua like poet?
That the Britney Spears dance scene, which starts with him quasi singing, is one of the most beautiful things in film history.
It's incredible. Was she under her conservatorship then?
Probably.
Is this like, okay, to the extent that this film is a rumination on like the unfreedom of freedom in the US, like, is it also a like cry for help for Britney Spears?
I did have the thought of like, okay, now we're in the 2020s cycle of like the public and cultural relationship to Britney Spears and what that means now compared to 2012. And like, there's been like reckonings and like counter reckonings and then another reckoning to the counter reckoning.
Yeah. I mean, Aileen says she's an angel if ever there was one, right?
Yes. And that's, I think, Southern coded. Britney Spears is from Louisiana, right? Do I have that correct? The haunting one note on the piano with the fucking bloody finger after Cotty gets shot as he makes his poem about the little chickies is
the little
terrifying.
Chickie poem is chilling.
Yes.
It's also hysterical. I mean, like,
yes, correct.
It's simultaneously like it's almost like being read with two voices. One is like this like borderline like minstrelsy kind of voice, and the other is like this really kind of sinister commentary on like the action of the film or like the context of the film.
The trafficking women, or
there's also like an interesting right that they're animal figures, but still cutesy ones, right?
Yes.
So there's a kind of paternalism, but also a dehumanization. But then that he says they're going back to the farm is interesting because that's also like a euphemism when you're talking about children's pets for death.
Yes.
Right. So like, do they ever go back to college, or are they all dead at the end is another question another version of the question of like what's really happened in this film.
I did have the question of whether like the escape at the end is a fantasy. And whether it's Aileen's fantasy or whether it's Candy and Britt's or I think would be an open question if we wanted to pursue that reading. His performance in general is incredible, and you hate to hand it to him, but
yeah,
I think the way he, as you said, like performs the Little Chickies poem in multiple voices with his voice is I think entirely correct. And in part, I think like what voice you hear it in is dependent on whether is what's the visual on the screen, right? Is it him? Is it the like shot from like the middle distance from the other side of the piano? Is it one of the close-ups on his bloody finger tapping out the one rhythmic note? Or is it like other stuff that's happening while that is the audio track?
Okay, a question I had for you is like, what do you think the gaze of this film is? Because I think, right, there's an obvious read that it's like at least deploying intentionally the male gaze.
Mm-hmm.
The literal kind of play with phallic investiture in the like fellatio of the gun scene. Also the uneasiness of the gaze. Like sometimes it's uncomfortable, not sexy, which is like an
most of the time,
yeah, but that's an interesting version of that, right? Because it doesn't render the women that are made object in those moments available in the way that the typical male gaze does, right? It renders them like objects, but also I think puts the onus, a responsibility for questioning like, ooh, what do I want out of this object? Like on the viewer, which is, I think I don't know if it's like an inversion of the gaze or like.
It's like a making fragile of the gaze or something. The male gaze that is deployed and reworked in this film is like always already deconstituting itself by its very attempt to shore itself up. So it's like a perpetual deterioration, and that's some of the uneasiness, I think.
Yeah, and it's interesting too because we get from Faith, from Selena Gomez, right, an articulation of that.
Yes.
She says over and over again, I'm uncomfortable. I'm uncomfortable. I don't like it here. This isn't why we came here. There's this interesting like way in which I think that those moments of dialogue from her kind of sub in for one of the like general affects of the film, which is like, this isn't why we came here.
Yeah, it both entirely is why they came down there. And one of her voiceovers earlier on the call to her grandma that gets repeated right later speaks to that fantasy of escape and of seeing something new can never be real also for them. And that's in part because of like patriarchal forces in the male gaze. Not entirely, but that's part of it. That is even, I think, made quite physical and literal in the way that Aileen like grasps her face that is both an excessively violent that he understands as an expression simultaneously of as he says, I like you, right, over and over and over again. And like he views it as like an emotional moment. I think that's how we're meant to read that moment of Aileen. But I don't think that the character Aileen is ignorant of the violence that is on display in that gesture towards Faith's face.
Totally. Right.
And like
you're the answer to my prayers.
I know. Well, talk about faith and temptation.
I know. I also just love, I despise a film that like aspires to a really abstract, artsy kind of commentary on something, but like does not trust the viewer to understand what it's about.
Yes.
Like this is a very hot take and a lot of people disagree with me on this, but Call Me By Your Name, I was like, if one more thing filled with liquid explodes in this movie, I'm going to lose my mind. Like we get it. Okay.
Yes. Unsurprising, I agree with you on the general and specific point here.
I think what Harmony Korine does that's like a kind of leaning into that, but without doing it all the way, is like he literally sets up faith and temptation as like dialogic, like in movie dialogue as like potentially an offering for like a theme or a frame through which to watch the film. But like it doesn't map on to every choice, or even really take you much further than just Faith deciding to go on this trip. Like temptation is not like, it's not really a question of temptation at all. It's a question of like something entirely different, which I love.
It's a question of violence and excess.
Yeah. So it's like, it's almost like
whiteness.
Let me hold your hand, and then like a haha gotcha. This isn't what this movie's about, which I think is so clever.
And then Faith gets on the bus, right? Cut to black. And the first line is Alien saying, "I must be dreaming," as he does his like, director shots in his first poem of the three remaining young women on the pier.
It's so funny. And like, I made it come true.
Mermaids, these girls in front of me. Yeah.
Okay, we haven't even talked about Gucci Mane.
I know.
Was this the first thing he did when he got out of prison? I feel like there's a really fascinating tonal change when Gucci Mane enters into the film, and suddenly like the stakes of the film become more clear if we're reading it as a film about race. When we get James Franco sort of like using this fact of his childhood as like a moral shield a little bit, right? Like, I was the only white kid, blah, blah, blah. Like, I think it's supposed to, he wears it as like a badge of pride that both ingratiates him to people and also explains his behavior and justifies him and like lets him off the hook, makes him more legit. There's like, it serves in all these different legitimating functions.
Yeah, like his white proximity to blackness and appropriation thereof is like his condition of possibility. And the scene at Archie's strip club is like where that condition of possibility like first gets called into question in the film. So there's it's not only the fantasy of the four spring breakers that has to get broken over and over and over again, but like it's also Aileen's that has to get broken over and over again.
Because I think you also get the sense that like actually contrary to his guns, his money, all of his shit, like he's kind of a small time bit player.
Correct.
And like Gucci means the real deal. And Gucci means like, you're getting in my way. You're annoying me. And like, I'm not afraid to do something about it.
I taught you everything you know.
Yeah.
And then we're going to call back to the opening fucking scene of a professor lecturing them about Elvis and Black politics and Black culture. Like then Aileen calls Archie professor.
Yeah. Incredible.
And there's also something about the way that Aileen in the strip club, like he does zero interaction with any of the dancers, right?
Yeah.
He's not, except to like throw money, like generally in the air. Like he is ventriloquizing like his status, power, and desire towards them through Britton, Candy, and Cotty, partially. And through like the other people in his entourage or his crew. Correct me if I'm wrong. Well, I know none of our four main characters, or five if we include Aileen, none of them have sex until like the pool in the like penultimate scene, right?
Yeah.
So like there's so much like desire but so little sex in this film. So maybe that's also another ways in which it saw the future, right? We talk about the sex session or whatever.
Yeah. Sex session.
Sex for session. As I believe the term trend journalists I'll actually use. I just prefer sex session.
Sex session is better.
Yeah.
Sex for session does not flow off the tongue. That's so funny.
I don't know what to make of the fact that there's no actual sex in the movie until then, despite the desire and horniness and nudity and whatever. Especially given like Cotty's playing with the fact that this guy wants to have sex with her very clearly.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's all like the proximity to sex, it all feels like dangerous, not sexy.
No, not
which
in the
is
slightest.
Also interesting.
I mean, it goes back to your like gaze question about what the gaze of the film is asking of the viewer. It's like, do you find this sexy? Like, do you find like this particular mode of horniness, right, in its proximity to violence and danger? Like, does that titillate you? Does it more than titillate you? Does it less than titillate you?
Yeah.
What does that say about yourself?
What does that say about you? Yeah. It's interesting too, because when the sex happens, there's like a shift in agency. Like they've become intentional agents and like, and arguably kind of like taken something away from James Franco.
Yes, because the audio of them as they have sex in the pool is them questioning him being scared, and him, like when he filleted the guns, like becomes like the sub, right? And he like embraces the I'm a scaredy cat to the two of them.
Yeah, there's something that, like, I wonder if there is a kind of queer read available of him in this film. To some degree, or that like there's something around his relationship to sexuality and masculinity, obviously, but like to what degree is he overperforming heterosexuality in a way that actually undermines his real like desire or something like that, or reveals even maybe his kind of the complexity of his actual desire. Because he's kind of like a failed masculine subject in some ways.
He has all his shit that we have to look at. He has the like white piano outside by the pool on the beach. He has like all of that. He is running drugs. He has the car, whatever. But like the exterior of his house is like not fancy and elaborate. Certainly not like Archie's. And like he's got like neighbors in St. Pete. He's like, he's running this life. And like, this is another of the like suspension of disbelief when they just like start shooting into the sky and into the ocean. It's established in earlier shots from the film that like there are neighbors around.
Yeah, that's really funny. I didn't think about that.
but yeah, so I do think he's failed. And I think that's obviously bound up in like, it's excessively bound up in his whiteness too.
Yeah. If there were going to be sex before, at least for the girls, it would be like all of the contexts are contexts where I think their agency would be questioned a little bit. So it's an interesting like rumination on them as actors in their own lives or as agents in their own lives. Like that the thing that gets them isn't actually, the regular spring break debauchery. Yeah. It's like them sort of becoming, they like supersede spring break in some way. They are in excess of spring break, and then they become the agents of the violence, and they co-opt it, like both the masculinity and the proximity to blackness and the white ignorance, right, of James Franco. It becomes theirs. Like they're which is very interesting. And then like, that's when sex happens.
Yes. Yeah. And only after the part of when Brittany takes over the audio track from James Franco singing Brittany, and the like dance with the guns at dusk on the beach is like becomes a montage of 3 separate robberies right, that they commit, including, I would point out, one at the fucking arcade. When one of the early lines of dialogue is they are like doing coke off of the dorm room washing machine. Great image, by the way. And they're like pretend it's a video game. And so one of the robberies is then literally at an arcade. And then the like white heterosexuality of it all, they rob a fucking wedding and shove the groom into the wedding cake, and like shirtless Aileen like has pieces of like frosting stuck to his body with like guns in both hands. Right.
So in both cases, it seems like they're like the girls are running that.
This is A24's second ever release. Because I hadn't realized that until I looked this up this morning. And like 2 releases later is Bling Ring, which is obviously in conversation with, which they weren't made in conversation with one another, but like those 2 films are in conversation with one another.
Yeah. That's fascinating.
And like,
I haven't watched that since it came out. I wonder if that's
all I remember is like the excessive sleigh bells of Bling Ring.
Yeah. Oh my God, very much of a time. Should we do EPT?
Yes. We should.
Okay.
I think you should go first.
Well, I have actually a lot of theories here.
Okay. Why don't you hit me with one or two, and I'll see if I can zoom in some ideas.
Okay. Let's start with environmental racism.
Please.
As a frame. Let's accept spring break, the concept, the phenomena, as itself an allegory, just a straight allegory for climate change in the context of the US.
Great.
Right? So we are consuming into oblivion as the literal ocean is sort of rising all around us. The spring breakers are a relatively mobile middle upper class who have no connection to place or land necessarily. Even if they're not uber wealthy, right?
Right.
And then we have that juxtaposed with the bodies that in the context of climate change are expendable, right? So the spring breakers are kind of literally displacing Black people in the film in every scene, beginning with the lecture, right? The girls to literally sort of tune out, and the lecture about the second Reconstruction fades into the background as they are plotting their escape, right? Their escapism. I think that the girls get away with it, and that all the people who die are Black could be read as a kind of literalization of this sort of slow violence, the lives that are expendable. So it's a kind of not just an allegory, but a rendered, deeply kind of felt affective, literalizing of this broader process whereby climate change makes Black and brown people available for death, and that those deaths are deaths we don't mourn for some reason. And so that they're gangsters is part of the internal logic of the justification for their deaths, and the relative lack of affective sympathy for them as characters whatsoever, right? Their deaths are very callous, very...
None of them were characters other than
not Archie. At all.
I don't think we get any names for anybody who is killed except for Archie, right?
And even Archie is sort of barely a character. And I think not by fault of the filmmaker, but intentionally because of what the film is up to.
Correct.
And so there's this way in which the metaphor of spring break for climate disaster, climate change becomes literal in the acceleration of death at the end of the film. So doing some of the stuff that we think the Deluge is doing about trying to make material a problem that feels abstract. The escalation of violence, I think, in the film can be read as an attempt to do that and to demonstrate that, and particularly as a function of environmental racism. That's my first offering.
That's excellent. I wouldn't change a thing about that, Reed. I think that's now the conclusion to this paper that we're apparently giving about the Deluge.
And spring breakers.
Surprise.
Surprise.
I'll offer kind of the one place that I was thinking about EPT was actually in terms of the function of spring break as escape and fantasy or whatever. The fact that the character, his rapper name is Alien, and embraces the alien aesthetic and the I'm out of this world, or I'm from another planet, or we are transporting to another planet as an allegory of capitalist realism. Right. And so if the idea is Mark Fisher reworking, Frederick Jameson's, it's easier to imagine the end of world and the end of capitalism, and it's easier to fantasize about spring break as an escape or to try to transport ourselves to another planet rather than confront meaning making in one's own lives. And I think there's a little bit of an allegory there. And then, I think that it's very easy. And there are bits of this in Fisher, and obviously others have been taking this in this direction, where like climate change also, there's like a climate realism or climate change realism where it's easier to imagine the end of the world than like actually doing something substantive about climate change on a global scale, commensurate with the situation. And
one of my frames was like the temporality problem in apprehending climate crisis, which I think dovetails really perfectly with what you've up here.
Yes, because the like repetition, because of the way that messes with time, the repetition of the dialogue and the like the place of the phone calls where like that could be a device used to reflect on the conditions that led you to seek this escape, but rather it's like reweaving of the escape back into your existing reality and like an idealization of that escape, despite that idealization being shattered. There's like the persistence of that across the film that I think could say something about like our persistence of the ways we accept and try to escape, but do so in a form of acceptance of capitalism and like the climate destruction that it causes.
Okay, I want to add to, if we're talking about the phone calls, a kind of like intergenerational ethics question.
Right, because it's grandma, you should come with us.
Yeah. And then like, if we by the end of the film are reading the calls as like a lie, almost, like what's the function of that lie? To be like, we're having such a great time. We've met so many people. We've made so many friends. Is it the ethical responsibility maybe works in two directions there too, right? Like to what degree do younger generations let their grandparents off the hook for the earth that they've inherited or something like that? You know what I mean? Like, is it, is ethical responsibility like a multi-way relationship, right? Is maybe a question.
Are the lies they tell grandma and moms, right? I think it's all to women, right? Who are in their families. Are those noble lies?
I don't know.
In a platonic sense.
Yeah.
Which I think is tied up in your question about like, what are the ethics of that particular intergenerational moral storytelling?
Because I think in one, there's a read where they are and there's a read where they are not. Right. And like to dramatically different consequences, actually, if we're thinking about the problem of kind of marshaling some real sense of responsibility for and thus like action on kind of climate change. I want to offer one more EPT thing. Okay. I want to propose that this film can also be read as a kind of rumination on disaster capitalism. So if we think about the gangs as actually a metaphor for the neoliberal privatization of like public services in the wake of environmental disaster and particularly in Black and brown communities, that like what it points to is the fragility of that, the precarity of that, the also like when these entities that are corporations in like our world, but are gangs in this world, are claiming, right, some of the sovereign like power and legitimacy
1,000%.
That like what they now become are these third-party agents authorized with basically the right to decide who gets to live and who dies. And so that the guns and the killing is again a kind of literalization of the power that we've actually offshored to corporations that have no democratic checks, that have no transparency and so on, that were once like things that we thought about as like at the very least collectively managed, if not collectively owned.
I want to add on to that by saying that in addition, there's this symbiotic relationship between the fractured neoliberal state and this like, I can't believe I'm forgetting this. Who's like the like state is the organized crime person?
Charles Tilley.
Yeah, of course, right. Yeah. So the Charles Tilley thing about like the state is kind of like the mafia, the organized like legitimate mafia. But there's a symbiosis in like perhaps many spring breaker towns up and down the coast where one assumes that the fines that get doled out by the judges doing overtime during spring break are like what pay the like shitty, whatever shitty municipal services exist for like these like environmentally like striated or like racially and environmentally striated
and
towns.
like it's James Franco paying the fine.
Yes, precisely.
Yeah.
And so it's like Aileen's crew or Archie's crew, whomever, are like supplying the drugs that the Spring Breakers buy. And in doing so, they're also creating an opportunity for the state to like derive rent from citations and then letting people go. And like then the thing that immediately springs to mind is the like DOJ report after Ferguson about like how Ferguson, like many like towns and municipalities across the country, like essentially use probation and warrants and tickets and so on, like that are disproportionately directed towards Black people and people of color more broadly to fund their existence as governments.
Yeah. And then like also that the girls kind of enter into James Franco's like service, right?
Yes.
That they sort of become like, not literally, but like employees of this third party, right? Like,
yeah, but
which complicates some of the like agency stuff, but
100%,
yeah.
But like, who picks up their like drug empire, quote unquote, at the end of the film? Is it Britt and Candy if they even survived? Is it what happened to the brothers? Like,
yeah. And so it all, like one read of it is that it all collapses, right?
Yes, exactly.
So like, again, pointing to its sort of precarity. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's so much here.
I know. So I think we should do you started us in this direction a little bit ago, but a bit of Deluge takes. Who among Deluge characters, major, secondary, tertiary, I don't care, would most love and most hate Spring Breakers? I have 2 nominees for biggest fans of Spring Breakers among Deluge characters, if you want a second to think.
Okay.
Number 1 fan, Quinn Worthington.
Oh, okay.
Number 2 fan, Liza Udong.
Yes. Yeah. I was like, Jackie, no. Jackie
Nope.
has the first read where she's like, this is sexploitation.
Yeah, precisely.
Yeah.
Tony likes the movie but would never admit it, even more so than neither of us wanted to admit it in 2012.
And also, Tony does not understand why he likes it.
Correct.
Yes. So it's confounding to him.
Matt has the same response as Jackie.
100%. And like
Kate has never watched it.
No, but like
she would like it.
Yeah, she would like it, but she's just like not there for. Yeah, she's like I don't care about the discourse.
Yeah.
Keeper
wouldn't watch it.
No, Keeper would not watch it. What about Shane?
That's the crucial question, because like,
have we done Shane? Have we released Shane 5?
Yes, because I listened to it to like get back in the zone, because it's been a few months since we recorded. So I listened to it earlier this week.
So an interesting thing to pair Shane with Spring Breakers is like, were they ever really there?
Mm-hmm.
Did this ever really happen?
And their connections, problematic as they are in both cases, to the American South.
Yeah. Like, I feel like Shane would have got roped into watching this at some like, hipstery party in Jackson Hole, and then there would have been like a debate afterwards, and she would have been like, "This is too close for me to actually like weigh in on the merits of it as like a film."
I think that's probably the correct read. Yeah,
like her relationship to the film is too uncomfortable to want to even participate in the debate.
Yes.
What about Peter?
Peter, you know what? I'm giving him too much credit on like the bro with the heart of gold aspect of Peter. I think he liked it, couldn't articulate why, but did understand un or subconsciously what is happening in the film. But
also, that's it. James Franco literally says, "I'm a gangster with a heart of gold" at some point. So, like, does Peter kind of begrudgingly over-identify with James Franco?
I think the class intervenes. I think the class difference intervenes.
Oh, so Peter can have like a little bit of class
Peter's
distance.
Slumming it. Yeah. Peter's slumming it with Spring Breakers.
Yeah,
for him.
Interesting. Okay, if Ash and Seth watch this movie, what's the conversation they're having afterwards? Like, okay, hear me out.
Go for it.
One conversation they're having afterwards is Ash literally just says, "This is why we shouldn't have kids."
Yep.
Right? Mm-hmm. And then Seth's like, "That's what you took away from this movie." Yes. And then they have a whole fight about whether or not to have a child.
I love it. I love it because Seth gets and likes and can express why.
Yes.
For Spring Breakers.
Yeah. And like Ash sees just the one note.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Which is funny because I think if he thought about it, he would see all the things that we see.
Hanaya, huge fan.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally.
Hanaya shows it to Peter. That's why I think it happens.
Okay.
And that raises complicated feelings for Peter.
That's really
and he feels fraught about it.
I'm thinking too about like the concert as a pretext for an organized action.
Right.
And like spring break as a site potentially of resistance against.
Okay. Yeah. 19-year-old spring breakers to launch like the commune.
Yeah, but you have to radicalize them.
You do
using the AI.
Yes,
because otherwise they're just in lecture, tuning out. Watching the slides go by on their laptops.
Exactly. All of them have Macs as well, which was funny to me.
I know, but I think too, if you update like 2012 to 2026, like now the thing we need to escape from is actually climate disaster.
Yeah.
Escapism is not perpetuating climate disaster. So like, I think there's potentially an opening there.
Mm-hmm. There is. Yeah.
Marshall the Spring Breakers.
I thought you were going to go somewhere slightly different there where like I was going to abstract away from it a bit more to say like so the concert, which is like the fun, rowdy poppy thing, is the cover for Radical Direct Action. Like the debauchery, idealized romantic spring break is not what this film is actually about.
Yeah.
Or engaged with at all. And instead is also interested in questions of violence, albeit quite differently.
Yeah, totally. Okay, I think that's better. Are we missing anything?
I don't think so. I mean, I could talk about this movie forever.
So I saw that you recently watched both Surat and If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You.
Yes.
Speaking
Great
of
double feature.
tense movies.
Yeah. I went with friend of the podcast, Amy Schiller, and I went to see Surat, and we were transfixed and we loved it. We loved Surat so much.
I thought it was excellent, and I will never, ever watch it again.
I think that's probably right. Although honestly, if like someone was like, John, you're going to go to Partisan Film. No free ads except for the like co-op micro cinema in Burlington, Vermont, Partisan Film.
I love that.
Tomorrow, like today, I'd leave right now, this podcast recording.
Okay, but Surat also an interesting parallel to this film, I think, because the context of like a party, but in that instance, it's more explicitly like people who are on the margins of society and outcast, but that as a setting to ruminate on these like huge structural questions that circumscribe like the question of life and death and the question of violence is like,
and like literally like biblical themes. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Which is also in Surat. Like the opening fucking, scrawl of like Surat is the bridge between paradise and hell.
Yeah. That movie shook me to my core.
Yes. I was also thinking about that film in relation to Spring Breakers, which is back-to-back days. Like I'm winning at life. In
having a real spring break.
I know.
Oh my God.
It is my spring break. So this is part of the timing for this, in addition to the Jackie episode for next week. The inverse of like the way that a lack of color is so central to the majesty and horror of Surat, and the oversaturation of like these rooms, these places.
How do we end this?
I don't know. There's a little bonus tacked on at the end. I saw it with my friend and I who I podcast with on my other podcast, Regan Levitte. And we recorded a couple minutes of audio of her reaction to her first time watch. So we'll throw that on the end of you and I talking.
Okay. Were any like hits I need to know right off the bat? I'm going to listen, obviously, but
I asked her the Saltburn question because her and I are like the biggest Saltburn fans among our many groups of people. This will not surprise you, but a fellow friend of the pod, Daniel Hanley, not a Saltburn fan.
Not a Saltburn fan. No, it doesn't surprise me at all.
I asked Regan the Saltburn question. She does, I think, some great analysis, particularly of the dancing to the Britney Spears in the pink masks with the guns. I'd say that's the highlight.
Okay. I'm excited to listen. I can't wait. Not exactly sure where this is going to be or when and where.
I think
Jackie.
This can happen pre-Jackie. So next up, not in terms of recording timelines, but release timelines, is Jackie 5.
Next up is Jackie 5. Thank you for joining us on We Are the Deluge.
And spring break forever.
Spring break.
Regan Levitte, third chair of Not Quite Great Books, a TV podcast. You just saw Spring Breakers for the first time. What are you feeling right now?
I feel so glad that I make good choices.
Yeah? But we haven't lived quite like Brit and Candy, you know.
Well, you haven't. Neither have I, for the record. I do believe that Harmony Korine is trying to make perhaps commentary on the extremes to which we push each other. And I think that's it.
I like that because obviously this movie has caught a lot of shit for for 100,000 reasons. One of them being that it's like has no meaning and is about nothing and all of that.
It's about stuff.
Uh-huh.
It's about money.
Yeah.
It's about money and what we're willing to do to get it.
Okay. Look at all of my shit.
Look at all of my shit.
What do you think about the sexualization of look at all of the shit that we are supposed to look at?
I think Harmony Korine and his cinematographer are clearly boob guys.
Yeah, I mean, that's well established in the film. Yep. Mm-hmm.
I think the thing that sticks out to me the most about the sexualization in this film is actually Alien giving the guns a blowjob.
Yes.
Maybe commentary on America's love affair with guns.
Mm-hmm. I like that. Yeah.
Spring break, you're supposed to be living free.
The Britney Spears performance.
Amazing. Beautiful.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Again, also about, like, America's love affair with guns. Clearly.
You mean the dusk, the dance, the cutting back and forth between that
like
and
the Bring Around the Rosie with the guns
mm-hmm.
as the hand-holding parts. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. After they had robbed an arcade, right? That's one of the places where one of those robberies takes place.
Yep. And a wedding.
Yeah.
More important than fun and weddings. Guns.
Apparently.
Welcome to America.
Thoughts on the use of color in this film?
I feel like it's giving beach noir.
Uh-huh.
Like a little Miami Vice.
I pitched this to you as this walked so that Saltburn could run.
Yes.
Is that an accurate pitch? To me, this is the single movie that is most like Saltburn. And you and I both love Saltburn. We're on record saying this on the podcast and life.
This movie, maybe it's the two different cultures we're talking about.
It's American.
It's American versus, Saltburn's very British. But I'm not disagreeing.
All right, I'll take it.
So I'm going to say sure.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Regan, for joining us on We Are the Deluge.